On the scale of the most dangerous places around, you probably wouldn't even think of the Philippines, but if you work in the media, it's right up there. The country can be a murderous place to be a journalist. The exuberant free press that grew up after the fall of the Marcos regime is shadowed by political killings and attacks that are waged through the courts. Violence against the media reached a dreadful peak in 2009, when 34 journalists and 24 other victims were kidnapped and shot to death as part of a political blood feud. And it's not just that the killings keep happening, it's that the killers escape prosecution. They murder journalists in the Philippines with virtual impunity. The Manila-based Center for Media Freedom and Responsibility says there have been more than 150 media workers killed since the Marcos regime ended in 1986, but only 10 convictions. The Listening Post's Meenakshi Ravi now on the dangers of being a reporter in the Philippines and what that means for journalism there.
If one was to guess where the worst case of a mass murder of journalists took place, countries like Iraq, Somalia, and Syria might come to mind. It's the Philippines. In late 2009, in the southern province of Maguindanao, 58 people traveling as part of a politician's convoy were killed. 34 of them were journalists. 4 years on, there have been no convictions, and already this year 7 journalists have been murdered. A newspaper editor in Mindoro Oriental Province, radio journalists in Mindanao, Cebu City, and Cabasalan, 2 tabloid journalists in Manila, and a photographer in the province of South Cotabato.
Doing stories about criminal acts, illegal acts, about corruption in government or in collaboration with private sector or in any other sector can really put you in danger being a journalist. Sometimes journalists have been killed just for criticizing a person.
The Philippines is a unique case. I think we have a very robust democracy, a very noisy press. I think we're the freest in Southeast Asia. At the same time, we're not a model for what good journalism is all about because we have journalists are being killed.
In January 2011, radio host Jerry Ortega was shot and killed. Ortega had spoken out about alleged widespread corruption in the Malampaya gas fields project near the western islands of Palawan. Investigations into the assassination implicated political figures in the plot. The case remains unresolved. A more recent case, in August this year, was the murder of Fernando Solihon, a political commentator in Mindanao. The death threats came while he was on the air, hosting his radio show. During his last broadcast, he read out a threatening text message and fielded hostile phone calls. He was killed in a drive-by shooting that evening. The case remains unresolved. After the carnage at Maguindanao in 2009, President Gloria Arroyo promised there would be justice.
The perpetrators will not escape justice. The law will haunt them until they are caught.
The current president, Benigo Aquino III, says his government is working overtime to prevent new cases of human rights violations and to resolve previous cases. He has asked that people be patient, but it's not helping.
The University of the Philippines, or UP, is doing more than the president. At least UP 3 years ago has introduced an elective course for would-be or aspiring journalists or media men that trains them how to do hostile coverage, how to detect if you're in a possible hostile situation, how to protect yourself in the pursuit of an explosive story. But the president, yes, he has said a lot, but at the end of the day, cases about killings of media men is still largely dependent on the lawyers and the judges.
The disappointment has come from a position that the Aquino administration has taken, that once a case of a violation against press freedom or against the life of a journalist has been taken to court, that it is now must leave it to the judicial process to bring that to its conclusion. Unfortunately, our court system is not built for quick justice.
It's not that journalists never see their day in court. It's just that they are often the ones in the dock. Libel laws in the Philippines are broad and vague, and breaking them may mean up to 6.5 years in jail. In May 2007, Alex Adonis, a commentator for the Bombo radio station, was convicted under the law for reporting a politician's alleged extramarital affair. He spent 2 years in jail. In 2012, the United Nations Human Rights Committee ruled that the conviction of Adonis violated the UN's Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But Filipino journalists are still feeling the legal chill.
I've been sued by a big businessman, a former first gentleman Mike Arroyo, politician in a province, Supreme Court justice. Yeah. So libel is really a tool to make you stop writing about them or to intimidate journalists, so that you stop or you get scared and you stop writing about these figures.
It used to be in the past, the journalists thought that if they had a libel charge, it was like wearing a Purple Heart. I really got somebody to file a libel charge against me. Because in the past, most of the courts, most of these cases always ended favoring journalists. This has changed. In 2013 alone, we already have 11 journalists who are facing libel charges. That's a big number for a country that is supposed to have a doctrine of press freedom.
It wasn't meant to be this way. In 1986, after 20 years of the authoritarian Ferdinand Marcos government, a civilian-military coalition overthrew the president. The authoritarian lid had come off, but parts of the country boiled over. In the decades since the days of dictatorship, the Philippines has enjoyed greater freedom, but, like other post-authoritarian states, suffers from less stability. In the Filipino media landscape, there is a need for introspection. Media post-Marcos has had a growth spurt, but quantity hasn't guaranteed quality.
The development of the press post-Marcos became a very problematic issue because you had a press getting used to its freedom and taking to it with a degree of exuberance that swung the pendulum over to the extreme, where everyone felt that nobody can tell me what is right or wrong.
The Manila Broadcasting Company and DZRH station recently held a conference, and we did a Journalism 101 seminar. They were reminded to always bear in mind that you treat a person, an official's name, with dignity. When you open your microphone, you don't just criticize a person. You accompany your accusation or your commentaries with substance. So if that story puts you in a bad light, or you know how to defend, or the network will know how to defend you, right?
However, the crimes against journalism, the occasional misdemeanors that Filipino journalists commit, just don't compare to the crimes committed against them. The courts, the libel cases, and all the media murders that go unpunished, they're the big story when it comes to journalism in the Philippines.
More Global Village Voices now on the perils of journalism in the Philippines.
Filipino journalists are at their most vulnerable when they're covering corruption, hotly contested elections, the trade in illegal drugs, and abuses in the exploitation of our natural resources. Many of the killings of journalists happen in the provinces where the rule of law is traditionally weak, and where there's a thin line dividing crime and governance.
I think the Aquino administration should do more in addressing the problem of journalists being killed in this country. When he became president, he vowed to address this problem, but until now, there's been no conviction of, say, a mastermind behind a killing of a journalist. Until this happens, it would be just lip service on his part.